All right, thank you. So for everyone, the recording certainly serves as an aid, particularly for Miss Ebony, who captures our minutes, which is why we record these sessions. Well, we've started recording the sessions. All right, so from the board, we have Mr. Wiggins,
Yes.
Miss Amelga,
Present.
Sister Clark.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. From Morningside, we have Miss Smith,
Present.
Mr. Cheeser.
Evening.
Evening. From Leland, we have Principal Williams,
Good evening.
Miss Cypress,
Good evening.
and Mr. Richardson.
Good evening.
Good evening. From the regional team, we have Mr. Pace. Good evening, Mr. Evans.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Patterson.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody.
And the incomparable Sister Bowie.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Again, welcome everyone. We can kick the meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance here already. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we need a motion to approve both the March and April minutes that were sent out. So hopefully the board has had an opportunity to review those. We can entertain a motion for approval of those.
I move to approve the minutes from the March and the April board meetings.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the March and April board meetings. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
right, all opposed? So moved. Thank you so very much, board. Now we can move directly into the presentations. So first up we have Leland.
Okay, make sure I'm unmuted. Good evening to everyone. Let me just go. Okay. I'm sorry, I got confused when I saw Dr. Johnson's name first. Okay. Okay, well, good evening to everyone. And we'll start off with Leland, and I'll just move past here. Okay, so we always start off with this document. It just continues to have us in our attention focused on our practice this school year, which has been the Plan, Do, Study model, and how we've incorporated both of our plans that drive our instruction and our daily interactions with our scholars, which will be both our SEP and our SPP. You'll see that throughout this presentation, on our last submission of our SEP, we had to provide updates as it relates to our evaluation of whether or not we did meet our goals, and specifically the goals are in our character. And that's because at this point of the year, our parents, scholars, and staff have engaged in the end of the year survey. We're still kind of on the wait with our next assessment, formal assessment through STAR, because that will take place in the next couple of weeks, actually June 1 through June 11th. So during our June meeting, you will actually be able to see how we perform at the close of the year. So always focusing on our attendance. So this form basically just provides the number of students that we currently have enrolled, and it's a breakdown. It was actually data that was pulled from our STAT meetings, which are the presentations that we engage in through Prince George's County. Whereas teams, we really look at our plan, do, study, model, and begin to evaluate and get feedback on our performance. So this is more of a breakdown as it relates to the number of students between our grade 3 through our 8, and you'll see that it outlines each quarter. So you have that February data, that March data, and that April data. Again, broken down specifically by the grade levels that have, the least amount of chronically absent students potentially, and I guess to those who would have a larger number. So if you look at our 3rd through our 5th grade, overall, we have about a 7% of students who are absent. That is inclusive of 3 scholars who are who engage in distance learning from afar. Their parents actually opted out for the school year. It does impact our attendance because they are marked absent. However, they are just engaging under their parent supervision. So you'll see that total is 7%, with a really heavy focus on our grade 5. We had 17%, but the attendance team actually began to really dig deep in our data. And we did identify where we had some issues, a glitch in the system where many of our students were marked absent when they were actually present. So we are currently, and I think I even made mention of that in our last presentation, but working through that adjustment. At this point, our administrative team and our office personnel are completely responsible for their attendance and monitoring daily to ensure that we don't have those errors. However, that grade level still is one that is impacted the most as it relates to our attendance. When you look at our middle grades, you'll see that overall it's about a 9%, about 15 students who are chronically absent out of our total 161 students. Many of those students on the middle school level have been referred to MTSS as relates to supports for having the students to be engaged daily. We do see that the difference between our elementary and our middle school is many of our middle school students are home by themselves. Making contact with parents during the day is pretty difficult because they're not with their scholar. It's really the responsibility of the scholar to log on and engage throughout the day. So we've really been trying to put different strategies in place to support those scholars. We kind of joke on campus and Mr. Richardson being having an adoptive family, because we actually have one scholar in 6th grade that has a very difficult time remaining engaged during the day. But an example of his support is he actually meets with the scholar and her family each Monday to do check-in so that that scholar is supported and encouraged to engage in class. We still have our middle school students who engage with our AVID team for support. And again, that also was one of the strategies we have in place for increasing their performance. But you'll see that the grade that's been impacted the most has been our 6th grade, and they're about 15%. And that's 9 out of 57 students that have been identified with some chronically absent. Okay, so here, and I'm sorry, I have to move you all so I can see. Here we're jumping into our data, and this is where you'll actually be able to see where we are as it relates to meeting our goal for the instructional year. So this specifically is looking at our character data, and that character data is on our shared values data. So how our team really is reflective in the practice of being connected to justice, integrity, and fun, as well as our scholars. Now you'll see that I didn't include the family survey this year. The last 2 years, the family survey has been modified. The question types are very different from that of which the survey is for our scholars and our staff. They really more or less ask them to reflect more on the experience of being virtual, and there aren't many questions that are connected directly to our shared values. I will make sure that I share that currently we only have 15 parents that completed that. Well, I'm sorry, I'm confusing them. It's actually about 50 that completed our shared values. You'll see a little later that we've done one for intent to return, and there's only been about 15%. But again, the numbers have been pretty low as it relates to getting parents to really be able to give us that feedback. But you'll see that our goal for the year was 75% agreement rate. You'll see that I have last year's data as well as this year's data. This year's data, you'll see that it's highlighted in green, and it's indicating that we did meet our expected and actually higher than the goal that we set, which was 75%, but our scholars' overall agreement rate was 81.7%, and our staff was 95%. I just identified some staff areas of growth as it relates to some of the areas on that questionnaire that we didn't perform maybe as high as we wanted to. It was in between maybe about a 65 and 70% for these question types. But one was, have I had the opportunity to become familiar with our school's budget? And there was a percentage of teachers who just stated they hadn't had that opportunity. So what we're actually doing this school year is the staff will engage in an activity where they have say as it relates to one of our discretionary areas. It's actually our instructional and curriculum materials, in which teachers will again look at our big picture as it relates to assessment and a monitoring of student performance, and they will have the opportunity, looking at the funding available, to be able to engage in the conversation about what programs will we utilize next school year. And again, it's just being more mindful of that. What we've seen in the past is we've had quite a few different platforms that haven't been used with fidelity, and ultimately that's a waste of money. So again, giving them that knowledge space to be able to see the cost, but also, you know, supporting that fidelity is what really supports the dollar amount as well as the support to our students. You'll see that on the scholar side, one of the questions that came up was, I feel comfortable asking questions in class to help me better learn. So what we did this year is, again, we do have the Avid tutorial session with our middle school students, and the students actually get the choice to select which teacher they receive support to now on Wednesdays. So Ms. Cypress actually has revamped the whole middle school support on Wednesday to where students complete a Google form during the week. They identify the teacher in which they need support for, they generate questions in which they need assistance with, and then on Wednesday, students break out into small groups with their classroom teachers to be provided that support. So these are just ways that we've begin to kind of make adjustments in our practice to work towards improvement in the areas, but we did meet them this school year. Okay, so next, again, what you're going to see is this is our parent. And again, this particular question was not referenced in our survey. So what I just did is kind of collected some data on what we've done thus far as it relates to being able to provide opportunities for parents to receive important information. So you'll see that this school year, we increased the level and the number of opportunities that parents had for meetings and gathering information from our instructional team as well as administrative team. So you'll see with thus far, or we actually concluded our last parent university meeting on last week, but this year total, we had 17 parent meetings, specifically on areas in which we wanted to support our families more, but also feedback that we were given. Our Equal Connection has been a bi-weekly newsletter that we started in August. At this point, we're at 18 Equal Connections. They will continue throughout the summer, just as it relates to informing parents of all of the platform use that they're able to use. Our parent attendance meetings, we stated about 15 that actually have been conducted with our attendance committee. And again, these would be those students that you just saw in that data that really showed that some students need a little bit more support as it relates to their improvement in being engaged in the school day. We had 12 scholars that were referred to the MTSS meetings. And again, MTSS is for attendance. We really didn't have behavior, of course, this year, but also academic concerns for our scholars. And then an area in which we really wanted to support parents is the county did an overall grading amnesty period where they were able to really look at the grades that their scholars had performed, and they had opportunities to have chance to redo those. So what we decided to do as an Imagine team is for the fourth quarter, we decided to extend that opportunity. So parents, again, during this fourth quarter, have an open window to be able to complete assignments and submit them in an effort to reduce the number of E's and D's that scholars have. What you'll see here is multiple areas on our parent, staff, scholar survey, and that's of our culture data, our morale data, as well as our performance data. Again, you'll see that our goal was at least 80%. So you'll see at this point that we were able to meet that within our character data. You'll see again that the green area is our improvement from last school year to this school year. So you'll see that each year we had an increase. There was a slight difference in our performance data as it relates to our staff, but we still were able to meet the goal of 80% agreement rate. Okay, so here is a culture of high expectations, just really highlighting some ways that we're engaging our students in learning, really making much of the level of instruction be kind of cross-curricular for our scholars. So our students will be engaging in our National Honor Society induction, which will take place on Friday. Our 3D cohort, we're really excited. Hopefully you have the opportunity to click on this link. One of the board members from Lincoln actually supported us with being able to have this 3D printer in our building, but our students are meeting virtually each Wednesday where they're engaging in a 3D printer cohort. They're able to create different, it's really something. Their first item that they created was actually this little plastic piece that looks like maybe a Monopoly piece, and it took about 3 hours. But the students have really been excited and engaged. I will share the link. They're super excited to be able to get into the building, engage in it. But again, it just continues to make learning really, real for our students. We continue to engage our students in science virtual field trips. Our accelerated reading program this year, we had one third grader that actually read 60 books during distance learning. So we've been very excited with that. And then also we have our Finance Park, our 8th grade students just finished the Finance Park experience last week where they had the opportunity. Basically what it does, it's a system where the students engage in a virtual reality where they're given a job, a family, they're given a budget, and they have to manage their money within this process. So it was really neat to see the students kind of go through and realize that being an adult isn't always easy. But again, this is a way for students to be able to see how they, how you apply reading, math, writing, and so on to real world experiences. Okay, so what you'll see here is our overall goals for improvement as it relates to our STAR assessment. Again, we will be taking our STAR June 1st through June 11th. So in that June presentation, I will be able to share with you the gains that we've made this school year. But again, what I've included at the bottom is just we continue to focus, and you'll see in a few minutes, of our focus skills assessments, but also just really making sure that we provide opportunities cross-curricular for students to be able to practice that writing, that critical thinking, the discussion techniques. So I appreciate Ms. Imelda actually was able to join our scholars for this experiment with Mr. Brock. And it was a partnership with the Lumina company where students were able to extract DNA from strawberries. So this is just a picture of one of our students in the building actually engaging in the task. And then also it shows Mr. Brock, our science teaching, engaging scholars from afar. Okay, so this document is actually pulled from our SEP. And this time around for our SEP, we actually had our instructional leadership team to be the lead presenters in our work. One, just again, that's kind of like the essence of fun, providing everyone the opportunity to share, but just really allowing them to be able to speak of the great work that we're doing on campus. So one of our big rocks currently has been our focus assessments. Again, because our data from STAR, we hadn't taken another STAR assessment into January. This is basically what we've been doing to monitor student performance. So I'm going to click on one. Hopefully I'll be able to get back to the document without a problem. But this is just an example of what that looks like. So what we did is identify these focus standards that students demonstrate understanding through these assessments. And it's basically our monitoring tool to be able to determine what progress should be made as we lead up to STAR. We don't want any prizes, surprises. We want to go in feeling very confident in what our students understand. So this is just an example of one of the documents in which all of our classroom teachers are present on that left side, but then you'll see in the center, it's the standard. It's the number of students who actually engage, and then it's the average score for each scholars. So you'll see our kindergarten, 97%, first grade, 93%, but also this has kind of been our way of communicating with each other virtually. So you'll see that right-hand column is actually the detailed support that our instructional leadership is providing. These are the students who didn't take it. This is what you need to do next. And it's also a way to kind of collect that anecdotal notation for classroom teachers to know what to do next as it relates to their instruction. Oops, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong one. Okay. So what you'll see here is this is also one of our character goals for the year. And what you'll see on that left, it just really talks about our goal towards school development. Our target for this school year was 75%. You'll see that we have had an increase from last school year as it relates to our students with that 82%. Our teachers, it kind of went into, that was actually like a 95.5. So not much there lost, but again, reaching the goals in which we set. Within our SEP plan, you'll see that a lot of the work that we have been doing, again, is around providing multiple opportunities through different learning experiences to improve instruction. And you'll see on the left side, these are just some of the areas in which I'm identifying for next year. Our Naviance program is one that our professional school counselor offers. Our 3D cohort will continue. Our computer discoveries class, our Amazon Future Engineer, and then really excited, looking forward to next year, code.org is a support that Mr. Brock and Mr. Junaid are eager to lead next year. So as it relates to economic sustainability, I have a chart here that kind of identifies where we are as it relates to our enrollment. You'll see the first column are our grade levels, the projected number for this current school year going into next year. And then you'll also see the available seats that we have towards meeting that goal. Mr. Pace as well as Toby have been really supporting us as it relates to our open enrollment, ensuring that we have leads as it relates to enrolling our students. So daily we see that our numbers are beginning to get closer to that goal, again, with the main focus being 490 students for next school year. Okay, so in closing, this is just looking at some of our celebrations and important events that are forthcoming. Normally, if we were on campus, you always do the muffins with moms and the donuts with dads. PBIS team got on and we were like, how do we do muffins with mom virtually? I think we were all silent for about 10 minutes. And then we were like, wow, we could do muffins with mom. So the picture at the top is one in which we engage with our families in celebration of Mother's Day. I was excited. My mom even joined. But that's just a picture of all of us creating our muffins. We also celebrated teacher appreciation. Our theme was that we could not, are difficult for our teachers to go to the beach right now. So we brought the beach to Leland. So you'll see that teachers were in our library where we recreated it to create an experience of a resort to just appreciate and celebrate them for all their work. And then we also celebrated Ms. Vinay, who is our admin assistant, on admin assistant appreciation. And then just some things to mark your calendar for. On Friday, we will have our National Honor Society. On next week, we will celebrate our kindergarten and fifth grade students. They will be virtual ceremonies in which we celebrate them. On June 9th, we will have a drive-by ceremony for our eighth graders. I don't know if the whole team agrees with me, but I thought donuts with dads. I don't know if the dads want to make donuts. So we thought about dancing with dads. So we'll see how that unfolds and who actually engages with us, but that's upcoming for Father's Day. June the 15th is the last day for students, the 16th for our team. And then we'll be moving forward with summer school, which I will give you all updates for when we return for our June board presentation, but that will take place from July 6th through July 31st. And that is it for Leland this evening.
All right, thank you, Principal Williams. We'll now open the floor. Are there any questions for Principal Williams and the Leland team?
I have a question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
First of all, Principal Reed Williams, thank you so much for your presentation. A lot of wonderful things are happening. I'm really excited about the interventions you're doing based on your data and like targeting the specific students, as well as really, really excited to hear that you're going to be partnering with code.org. But my question has nothing to do with those things. For the STAR assessment that's coming up, I have three questions. When is it? And this is something that's been on my mind, but I've been like neglecting asking is, have you seen a drop in participation in the state assessment because of, remote learning? Are they doing it in person? Are they doing it online? And so, those are my questions around that. Just for accountability, is the participation lower?
Right, well, June 1st through the 11th will be when we engage. I would say the participation varies. Well, overall, no. We've had to be very creative in how we provide the support to ensure all of our scholars are engaged. So an example of that is we're closing out on our benchmark assessments through the county because it's just testing season. So it's almost one test after the other, but just being very creative today with our 8th grade scholars. Actually, 5 members of the team, including myself, jumped on this morning. Students received invitations, and we had maybe on the middle school level about 35 students who miss the first day administration. So 35 makeup tests is large. We would definitely never have that if we were on campus. But I will say out of the 35 students who were absent, we did have about 26 students to log on today. With the team all on at one time, we were able to get them through that first unit. Tomorrow it will be, moving around to Zoom links, finding the other students. But I think we have been able to make up. It's really just required us to really relook at our testing schedule, starting on the first day. Like a lot of times you don't want to test on a Monday because you're like, kids are not going to be ready on a Monday. You don't want to test on a Friday, but now 2 days are of the essence. So it's really starting right on time. And then luckily for Leland, we just have a full, heavy admin team that's able to jump on and support scholars. I would say another one is the NWEA. Mr. Richardson kind of knows that backhand because the students actually have to speak into a mic and their voices are recorded. So again, Ms. Dunn is amazing because she actually would have to go through and listen to see why the students' audios weren't collected. It was background noise at home. It was students going on mute. But again, I think that, just having a plan of what to do next has helped us to really make an impact on, not having so many students not tested. And then luckily to our advantage, the state has decided that, at one point they said that we were testing and then returned back that we were not testing. So we will not have to do our state testing. I'm just hopeful with our STAR testing because usually that is pretty difficult because it is the very end. Students will be testing up to that Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday are the last 2 days. So I do have some level of worry just within the short amount of time that we have to make sure that we have all of our students to test. But again, just thinking ahead of time, we've tried to be really creative, like a drive-by ice cream. We were like Chick-fil-A boxes if you take your STAR test. So just really thinking about ways that we can motivate our scholars and our parents to be 100% on test day.
That's awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for the Leland team?
I have a quick couple questions. Well, one question in particular with regards to the grading amnesty program. I think that's great. That you're doing that for the fourth quarter. I guess the question is, I guess in terms of percentages, is that are you seeing a lot of students assignments that aren't completed? I guess what I'm asking is, are you seeing a lot of students that are not on track to, perhaps benefit from the amnesty program, or is it just like a few students or whatever?
I would say that it's the larger group, but not necessarily due to failing. We have students who may have been higher performance when we were in the building. And I just say, focusing on instruction 8 hours on a computer, once you get halfway through the day, you're just not paying attention in some instances. So the amnesty just provided additional opportunities for students in those restless moments to be able to come back and attack and execute an assignment when they're given their full credit. So I will say, I believe that almost all of our students have benefited from it because it's just been an opportunity for reteach. Now that we've transitioned back on campus, you have to calculate the amount of time in the morning. Arrival time is longer. So instead of starting at 8:10, we're starting at 8:45 because kids are still coming in. You're thinking about washing hands every 2 hours. You're thinking about the early prep for dismissal, 2:50 versus the 3:10. So again, a lot of the time now that we're back in the building is really on those kind of structural operational things. So I think the amnesty just provides more opportunity for reteach and extended time for scholars. Our hope is that much of what we learn for distance learning is just going to become common practice for us because it yields great results, and just identifying that Leland may continue with an amnesty period for students. Because again, whenever Ms. Cypress and Mr. Richardson and I are in a collaborative planning and we're talking with teachers, we always say, is the goal the grade or is the goal mastery? So when you're thinking
Right.
about that amnesty period, you're really just providing a structured time for reteach opportunities, greater impact in learning. So, you'll continue to hear that as a part of our normal practice.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, great. That's good to hear. It's also good to hear, or see rather, that that there's no available slots in the kindergarten, on the kindergarten level. Hopefully that'll kind of set us up for the future.
Right.
Okay. That's all. That was all.
Thank you, Livonia. Principal Williams, I had one question regarding the percentage of chronically absent students. It looks like 5th and 6th grade is where we have a significantly higher rate of absenteeism. And I know you spoke to this, but can you elaborate a little bit in terms of what the drivers are why we're seeing such a higher rate there?
Right. You know what? That I would think that that's a part of figuring out the why. It's been very difficult to figure out what's happening at that point. For our 6th graders, sometimes it's just that transition to middle school. That's a difficult adjustment when you're on campus.
Mhm.
So beginning to understand the transition from class to class. I also will say the number of students who we have maybe that need additional supports in that class. The student that I made reference to that Mr. Richardson supports is one of our 6th graders. She's probably one of 10 to maybe 11 that needs that same level of support. So really it's just that those groups that need attention, and we knew that those groups needed attention. So we actually started our articulation process today, and that's what we talked about. So what do we know going into next school year? We know that this grade level, it had exhibited some, humps in the road as it relates to being present and being alert each day. So these are some things that we're going to have to put in place for them, because historically that has not been the grade that's been a challenge for us. Now, it has always been the subgroup of elementary, but historically that hadn't been the grade that had, so many issues with chronically absenteeism. In the past, it's really been our 2nd and our 3rd grade students, our younger students. So again, still question marks around, how did distance learning affect that group the most?
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that was an answer without an answer, because we're still trying to figure that out. I think it's really been the impact of distance learning.
Yeah.
I don't think that grade would have been, those percentages if we were in-house.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. And thanks to you and the Leland team for the continued great job that you all are doing. Appreciate the work that you put into the report.
Thank you.
All right, we'll turn it over to Mr. Cheese and Ms. Smith for the Morningside report.
All right, good evening again. So I'll be presenting my screen here. Share my screen first, 5%. All right, we'll be presenting here on behalf of Imagine Morningside. I will tackle a few slides, and Ms. Smith will also accompany me in this process. All right, so like always, our three areas of focus: rigorous instruction, restorative environment, and migrant society, keeping our vision and our mission with everything that we do every single day, virtually and hybridly with our scholars at Imagine Foundation in Morningside. All right, as of our parent choice, we continue our communication on Class Dojo, weekly principles on communication from the Eagle's Nest on a Friday for parents to know what's happening ahead, what has happened during the week and what's happening in the upcoming week. Also continuing with a monthly newsletter to parents. And we are in the open enrollment for the school year 2022, and I'll talk more about it in the next slide. As far as our Imagine Family Survey, the families all have access to the survey. They're taking the survey. So we actually received the data for the survey today. And in the June board meeting, we'll report the data for all 3 surveys, comparing how we met our goal and so forth. And then upcoming, we have our closing ceremony. So in June 9th, it's our kindergarten and 5th grade virtual closing ceremony on June 10th for our 8th grade. We'll do one part is a pre-recorded ceremony that will be projected live on YouTube Live, and then after that we'll do a drive-by also events in the afternoon for our 8th grade as of the closing ceremony. And then our teachers will conduct end of the year award ceremonies within the grade band, where they will invite parents and families to join as their honor scholars for honor rolls, for different distinguished award within the subject area in the grade, as well as attendance. Okay, that's for parent. So as of our economic stability here, this shows you our numbers as far as the lottery is concerned. Dr. Johnson has meetings with our school registrar, who's also managed a lottery twice a week, a meeting to discuss where we are with our goals. And then we are doing a really good job with having good leads with our marketing campaign. As of right now, we have a radio announcement that's going on into 2 different radio stations in the DC, in the DMV area. And the radio announcements it's from 2 of our dads who made who recorded the announcements with the scholars at the end of it, saying the grades that we still have open, for enrollment. And we also recorded a promotional video last Monday, and this promotional video will also be another way to continue to market the school, as well as share with parents that in the past they will come in the building to see the building and get to visit the building, but instead, because they can't come right now, we'll just send this video to them. The video should be ready in the upcoming weeks, and we'll share with you as well. And we'll also share with you the exact radio station where the promotional campaign is happening, so you can definitely look forward to hearing that. Dr. Johnson went out and passed out letters to different daycares operators, all the daycares operators around that usually serve our scholars and our community, our families with van and after school. So she went out to pass out daycare letters, and as well as setting up a time to come back and speak to parents from the daycare, trying to reach out to recruit kindergarten scholars. And then Ms. Nemo is also reaching out to the parents on the wait list, and constant communication and potential parents. And we're already getting parents calling us and saying that, hey, I'm calling because I heard about the opening in the radio station. So right here, I have your remaining seats. I have at 31. Actually, I have the most updated number here is 25 as of today. 31 that was last week, but it's 25 as of today. So far we're doing really well, and it's picking up, and we're really reaching out to the parents on the wait list to let them know, hey, listen, you have a day, like, we're gonna get this going. Come and send us the information so we can have you enroll. So that's what, as far as our lottery enrollment. All right, so for our character development, we'll continue with our community circle every morning using character strong curriculum to support that effort. Our counselor for the month of May, her lesson for scholars in kindergarten to 5th grade was in relation to cooperation, with the focus on how to work together. Of course, the guiding lessons are also aligned to the character trait of the month. And then when it comes to 6 through 8, she has a lesson on using Naviance and the lessons on college and career readiness, supporting our scholars in 6 through 8, definitely beginning those conversation, and those lessons are specific, matching them with the goal that they have for themselves, what they want to do, and giving them a path line, what they should be doing from now in 6th grade to get them to their goal. So that's what she's really spent a lot of time this month in May with our scholars. May events, when it comes to character development, we had our PBS event was PBS event was a magic virtual workshop, which was definitely a hit, as I would say. The kids, we definitely enjoyed that. We had a Soaring Poet Society where scholars, parents, and teachers joined for spoken words, singing, poetry, it was recitation, it was amazing. It was definitely great to see even some parents, because each person had to join in with the stage name. Some of the parents definitely seeing them in a different element. Even some of the teachers in the building to see them in a different element, like with the love of poetry. And definitely scholars and parents asked for us to do this more, and even creating a poetry club next year as part of our after school groups and stuff. Of course, we continue the block meetings, which are hosted first Monday of the month. And then the counselor also hosted a high school option night, where, you know, she definitely had for parents in fifth through 8th to talk about the process of high school. And then we also invited Imagine Morningside alums, those who are in 10th grade, in 9th grade, to come and their parents, some of the parents, to come and speak about what do you need to do now in middle school, in 6th, 7th, 8th grade to get you ready for high school. And as far as the parents, what you need to do now as a parent to ensure that your child is on the track and the process of applying into all of these school of choice. So that was a really great night as well, with a good number of parents showed up to hear from alumni of Morningside. And okay. And then, of course, we were definitely also supporting families with the initiative that the Prince George County had with the mental health series. Okay, Ms. Smith.
Ready for the next slide, Chifa?
Yeah, go ahead.
All righty. As Ms. Williams spoke to, with Leland, we've been following a PDSA cycle for our SPP goals. And one of our academic goals were around reading and math assessment. We worked with some real intentionality this year with the focus of aligning both of the plans to ensure we weren't duplicating work, and we wanted to work smart and not hard. And so far that work is showing up in some pretty significant gains. With our start from fall to winter, we've increased our growth by 17%. In math, we've increased by 10% growth, which math has been a struggle area, I think, across the county. We're seeing that level of growth in math and really seeing scholars really start to close some of those gaps. You can move to the next slide, Chifa. Thank you. So, indicator of adult success, a lot of our adult success was around aligning those assessments that you've heard Dr. Johnson speak to, with the assessments, the objectives, and that alignment. 80% of our teachers will state that the lesson objectives and aligned assessment and check for understanding as measured through informal observation. What we noticed is that we had to change our practice just a little bit because of the virtual setting, and because the barrier of not being able to necessarily get the lesson plan beforehand to really provide feedback. So that was part of the barrier, but we are seeing success in those lessons that we are teaching in our job embedded professional development during our collab days, those discussions that we're having in content meeting, because they're showing up in our informals, and we're seeing those strategies employed regularly and effectively in their teaching practices. And the teachers are really closing that gap and working hard to really look at how do they make sure that what they're teaching is aligned to the standard, and that the assessment is aligned to the objective, and so on, so that there is consistency in that teaching. Next slide. So part of our things that we wanted to do to change and adapt, and abandon for our last cycle in the third quarter was looking at STAR Custom. So within the STAR platform, there are opportunities for our teachers, especially those who may not understand how scholars are being assessed via STAR, to really check in to see how are they performing on a particular standard that has been problematic, or that particular groups of scholars are not seeing that growth. So a lot of our teachers have been employing, and we noticed that there are some struggles with using it with kindergarten. So they've been using Freckle and I Read to support them in those areas. But across the board, we're seeing the use of STAR Custom more frequently, and with that fidelity to really push the practice and really circle back to, I retaught it, now how are they doing with it, and to have that data to drive the instruction. We've also been partnering with our content leads to make sure that those lessons and those discussions that are taking place during our collab are spiraling back into content meetings, so that they have those opportunities as peers to check in on, well, let me see your objective, let me see your standard, and then let's look at the assessment. And they're pushing each other to really make sure that alignment is there, and so that the instruction is seamless. We also had our last PDSA cycle with the teachers, where they plotted out a clear plan based on the data to really look at what they were going to do with intentionality to grow their scholars to have that improvement on this final star window. So that has really pushed out numbers, I believe, this year. So when we look at our growth this year, and we look at our mid-spring, so when we completed our mid-spring, we've seen a lot of movement across bands as when you look at this data. And we're pretty excited about this data, because usually by spring, as Ms. Williams spoke to, the kids start checking out. And it's hard to bring them back, especially with the number of testing that's taking place and windows that do overlap. We've seen some great improvement in around that intentionality that we've placed on following the PDSA cycle, not just as an IoT, but as a whole school, where the teachers have their goal of moving 5% of their scholars. So we are seeing that show up in our data, and we're pretty excited about how it has translated this year, especially in our reading and math scores.
Good.
Yep.
All right, and this is for our attendance. I think we did something that we also, one of the board members asked for this last time, and we happened to also presented this at the stat meeting with the county 2 weeks ago. And it just shows where we are with, of course, the number of scholars for the last 3 months, and then also the number and percentages of chronically absent scholars. And for some reason, it's supposed to be different here for March and April for grade 8. Our challenge area for the whole year really has been upperclassmen 7 and 8. And it also has a correlation between that and also the number of D's and E's that the scholars also have. And some of the things that we've done as a school, we are definitely just put together an attendance task force to support attendance and ensuring that scholars are coming to class. We have reached out with the help of the PPW with the county, who have done some home visits to go and see some scholars to ensure that they're coming to class. And we have done some surveys to scholars. The middle school teacher done a survey to ask what is truly happening. But another thing that was actually happening was an error in attendance recording, and I believe Ms. Williams and Dr. Johnson spoke about it briefly last time. And the attendance issue the attendance error has been resolved, and they will constantly the data. And from now on, actually, we'll start taking attendance once a day for middle school. And then throughout the day, they will correct the attendance within themselves, but it will be taken once a day. In addition to this, we also had teachers that, at the beginning of the year, as late into January, we were still struggling with missing attendance. So having the school registrar having to go back and correcting attendance and fixing attendance or not entering attendance correctly. So we developed a tracker to see how many teachers are getting consistently getting an email on those Mondays to say that, hey, you have this missing attendance, because we know that when you have too many missing attendance, it makes it harder to go back and have to correct the attendance and so forth. And we had to do that. And then for those who were repeatedly in that list, definitely moving to the progressive discipline, after they've been coached and supported, moving to progressive discipline in ensuring that this was happening. So this has been really an area of growth for us, really with 7th and 8th when it comes to attendance. But we've seen that, you know, it has shifted since we have. I don't have the May data, but since we have kind of corrected the error, we began taking attendance once a day, and then we have something that we call Operation Come to Class. And I was doing it as of yesterday. I'm literally on the phone with the parent and say, hey, the parent, like, no, they go upstairs in the room, in the child room, and your child is not in class. And the parent is like, get to class, log in class right now. And I was still on the phone with the parent. I said, until I see them in class, I'm not hanging up, right? You know, and some scholars also decided to come in a hybrid model, which also helped them as well. So the May data definitely looks a lot different because of most of those who also attend this issue, their parents sent them help them in the hybrid model, because they were like, the parents were very honest, and like we are struggling to support them at home because they're working and so forth, and they're like, you know, they're middle schoolers, they can do they can handle it for themselves. But that's not the case when the parent come home. Oh, I was in class, but truthfully they were not in class. So that really has been a challenge, but it's getting better, and we're finding a different way to kind of like motivate the middle school scholars. They're gonna have a spirit week coming up where they chose what they wanted to do every day as part of like that virtual spirit week. So just, you know, it's been an ongoing thing. We took some feedback at the last staff meeting, you know, in hosting a block meeting just to celebrate those who are in perfect attendance in middle school. We did that as well. So it has been like an ongoing, as we're getting feedback from the regional team, from the county, from the scholars and the parent, has been an ongoing thing. But we've seen that the shift happening here in the month of May. You know, it's better late than nothing. But that also applying the grade amnesty policy, we're applying that as well, because it shows that, you know, the attendance reflects also the grade, right? But we did the grade amnesty policy. We did it in March, and we're doing it again this fourth quarter, just to support scholars to ensure that they are making up this work that they missed because of not being in class. Oh. All right, as far as the share value, Essence for Justice, during Imagine University, teachers spoke. They had a training on just like having how to reflect on the first year as a teacher. Was the first year at Imagine teaching. You know, how was your year? And May's SEL challenge to staff was about mindfulness May. As you know, we do a calendar monthly. We give it to staff, you know, with different suggestions of things that they can do just to practice self-care for themselves. You know, and then of course our counselor continue with weekly small group sessions that she does, you know, to support scholars with academic and social and just the behavior. And of course we had some closeout meetings to close out anyone that was in the SIP process that was either, you know, like we've seen an improvement, that we can put a check and close out the file. And we also had urgent retention meetings. We have a few scholars that are still not meeting the requirement that they need to be able to be moved to the next grade level. So we had those retention meetings and ensuring the parents that, hey, this is what the school have done, this is how we've communicated, this is the intervention we put in place, but the child is still not performing where they need to be. And these are the next steps as far as summer school. And if nothing happened in summer school, then, you know, it will lead us to that. And of course, SPED data review meetings. And then as far as integrity, we had about weekly team meetings to discuss attendance and complete data sheets for IEP, CETA, and SST meeting. We had a bi-weekly principal check-in to discuss staffing, enrollment, and instructional support. And then the teachers have completed the articulation process and class list. And then we are, you know, continuing with content adjustment to look at reflecting on this year, content pacing, and how they can improve for next year. And then bi-weekly meeting with our COVID compliance committee meeting that's happening all the time. Okay. All right, and this is our, we celebrate our teachers this year with our teacher appreciation week, and our theme for this year was how sweet it is to be taught by you. And then there was different theme, they do different thing activity every day that were relating to some sweets. And of course, it happened to be that all of our teachers all of our teachers were on some sort of a diet or something of things. So they were like, "You're killing us with everything sweet this week." But like, no, it's just 1 week, to show our appreciation and love for everything that you do. So that's pretty much our report for the month of May. Any questions, thoughts, suggestions? We're open for it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cheese and Ms. Smith. Any questions for the Morningside team? Any questions at all?
Not for me.
Me either.
All right. Very good. Thanks so much for the hard work, the continued excellence that you all are driving over at Morningside, and of course, the preparation that went into the report. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Indeed. So now we'll transition to Mr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Miller. I'm the Regional Facilities Director for the Imagine Schools Mid-Atlantic region. And I'll share my screen here, and we have some slides to provide an overview of the work the facilities teams have been doing in the Leland and Morningside buildings during the month of May here. Let's see. As you know, we did open up the buildings for students and scholars on April 8th. And I just want to include a slide here to just provide detail of what the daily routines are for our facilities teams in terms of cleaning and disinfecting, and this enhanced cleaning and disinfecting that we've been doing really the whole time that we've had the buildings opened during the COVID pandemic, but especially now that we have scholars in the building, certainly a higher level of work and more use of supplies and materials as well, now that we just have more people in the buildings every day. So as part of this, our facilities managers in both buildings monitor the inventory of supplies and equipment to ensure that we have consistent cleaning and disinfecting. They also work with the teams to make sure that we're using the cleaners and disinfectants safely, and that they're being properly stored away and securely stored away each day. All lavatories are inspected throughout the day and then sanitized when necessary. We have schedules in both the Leland and the Morningside buildings that the facilities teams use for this, and they also sign off on checklists throughout the day as they clean the lavatories. And then at the end of each day, immediately after all the staff leaves, and of course the scholars have left, the lavatories are sprayed down using our Iona Max electrostatic misters, and this utilizes a HOCl disinfectant we've been using. And that's done at the end of each day. Each lavatory is sprayed down and disinfected, as are all the classroom and office spaces as well. So that's a big part of our routine at the end of each day before we close up the buildings. We also monitor and clean up a breakfast lunch service in the multi-purpose room at the Morningside campus, and then help with monitoring and cleaning the breakfast lunch service in the classrooms at the Leland campus. We disinfect, wipe down high traffic areas and touch points throughout the day as well. So that's in the hallways, things like door hardware, door handles, light switches, around door frames, and certainly any areas in classrooms. When there are breaks, we can get into classrooms and clean things up there too as needed throughout the day. And then on Wednesdays, it kind of got cut off here, but if you do look at the slide separately, on Wednesdays, I did include that with the hybrid learning model, we have one cohort of students in the school buildings on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then a second cohort on Thursdays and Fridays. Wednesdays are really the days that we concentrate on doing a full deep cleaning and disinfecting of the building between the cohorts of students to ensure safety. And that's also a day that we are having our teams work on additional projects in the buildings and also kind of catching up on any cleaning. They might do things like, burnish the hallways, even get in the classrooms and do some floor work and burnishing. And then also we have our facilities managers coordinating if any repairs and maintenance, if we're having vendors come in to do them, we're trying to have them come in on Wednesdays just because it's easier to access the buildings at that point. And the facilities managers are also doing their own light repairs and maintenance on Wednesdays as well. I did want to outline the facilities projects that we're looking at for the 21-22 school year. And the majority of these will be worked on over the summer. So, you know, at the Leland campus, we've got a pretty big list here that we're looking to kick off here in June. This includes renovation of the Chelsea Hall lavatories, painting of the Chelsea Hall interior, replacement of carpet and ACM tile in Chelsea Hall, in the classrooms and the hallway. Also renovating the Seton Belt Hall lavatories, and then installing new window blinds in Seton Belt Hall. And then the Marlborough Hall renovations, where we're looking to add 4 additional classroom spaces in Marlborough Hall. So we are working right now on finalizing our estimates for those projects, and really trying to get us to a point where we can get work started on the week of June 21st, right after school ends, at the Leland building. And then we'll be working on those throughout the summer. And then at the Morningside building, a little less just because we got an awful lot done this past year, but we are seeking estimates for interior painting of some selected classrooms. The facilities team did, on a couple of these Wednesdays in April, did paint the exterior doors and handrails. If you've been by the building, it looks a lot fresher and cleaner now because we do have a fresh coat of paint on those exterior blue doors and the handrails and in the front and the back. But we do have some classrooms that we want to get touch-up painted as well this summer. We are looking to replace, and I've got some illustrations and photos here, replace the first floor classroom cabinets and countertops. These are just seeing some age from wear and tear since we moved into the building 10 years ago this summer. So we are looking to replace those just as we replace those on the second floor classrooms during the winter. And then the basketball court, we are looking to get that resurfaced. We're getting estimates for that right now, and also looking at getting new basketball goals installed there. That was resurfaced in 2011 as well, and is showing its age. So we want to get that taken care of. And then we've also got estimates together for playground renovations. So a full refreshing and replacement of some parts of the playgrounds, and then also having upgraded mulch placed in those playground areas as well. And again, the goal is to start these projects in June 21st, really the week after schools are closed for the summer. Any questions on the facility side?
Questions for Mr. Miller? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much, Mr. Miller. Really appreciate the update.
Thank you.
All right. So at this time, I'd open it up to the regional team, Mr. Pace, Mr. Toller.
Good afternoon. One of the, just everything that we've been focusing on as a region has been preparing for renewal. We actually will be in conversation with you tomorrow morning, Mr. Board Chair, and we will be engaging the board in regards to your strategic plan and what that support will look like for the upcoming renewal, in particular for Imagine Morningside.
Okay, indeed. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Toller, any words you'd like to share with the group?
Good evening, everyone. Nothing additionally, just always want to say kudos to Principal Williams and her most capable team, as well as Dr. Johnson and her team. Thank you so much for the hard work that all of you do. Ms. Cypress, thank you so much. Mr. Richardson, thank you. Mr. Cheesa, thank you so much. Ms. Smith, thank you for your hard work and dedication. And then also to our regional team for their hard work and the support that they give, particularly Mr. Pace and his leadership for the team. That's all that I have. Thank you, Mr. Board Chair.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much. And at this time, I'll open it up also to the board. Anything that you all want to share with the team?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to say this, these reports are really great and helpful. I think what would also be helpful is hearing if there are any challenges at the school or like opportunities, especially that need funding or, something that the board can help provide. Just hearing from those as they come up is also helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bystander?
That'd be me. I'd like did Ivan join the call?
I did. I'm here. Yes.
How you doing, Ivan? Can you just update us on the county board members that were supposed to be on the call and the reason why they are not?
Yes. And so last month, I think I mentioned to you all that we invited Mr. Harris and Miss Ahmed to join us. They were both actually scheduled to join, and we were excited about that. And last week, apparently, there was a last-minute schedule change where the Prince George's County board chair asked for them to be in a meeting at the same time. And so Mr. Harris had reached out and said that he was still going to try to make it around the 6 o'clock hour. It looks like that is still not happening. Ms. Ahmed had reached out and said that she would try to make it to our June board meeting. So we did hear back from both of them. We were excited to host them, obviously, but they did have a last minute schedule change and reached back out to send their regrets. So apologies, but hopefully they'll be able to join us at our next board meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, no, indeed. Thank you. Thank you for the efforts to really develop a stronger connection with the board members. As Mr. Pace indicated, the prep is starting for the renewal process. So extending that bridge to invite them in now to get a sneak peek at the great work that the schools and the school leadership is doing currently, while we also build, the plan for the future. I think will bode well for us in the renewal process. So thank you all for that.
Mr. Board Chair,
Yes, sir.
And so if there are board members joining us and Mr. Douglas, board members joining us next week, the next board meeting, it's been a long day. I think it would be extremely helpful for at least the board to take a look at the most recent site review report. And I think that would give some insight and be helpful in preparation for that meeting. Not that we would change anything or do anything different. However, I just think having that report in context would be helpful.
Agreed, Mr. Toller. Agreed. And we will definitely circulate that to make sure that the board members have that in hand. And in fact, as we've discussed the strategic plan and try to really refine the committees, we've done so with the site reviews in mind. Still, a lot of work to do, but we're really trying to drive some good alignment with the feedback from the site reviews as we are moving forward.
I just saw that we might have
Absolutely.
is that Mr. Harris that might have just joined us?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm still on this board call, but I jumped over here. I apologize. How are
No,
you
it's
doing?
totally fine. I was actually just explaining to the board and team members that you all had a conflict and I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to make it because we did hear back that we know that you were hopping in between calls. And so we were just announcing that we would definitely extend the invitation again for June. Since you were trying to make it at the last minute today.
Yeah, it's no problem. I have no problem being here now as well as June if you need me to be here in June as well, because I know our time's short. So I apologize again for the delay because this meeting is still happening.
No apologies necessary, Mr. Harris. I'm Anthony Pollard, board chair. Thanks so much for the receipt of the invitation from board member Douglas and for you making the time to join us in light of the busy schedule that you have. Of course, our leadership, Principal Williams, as well as Mr. Cheese and Mrs. Smith from the respective schools, Leland and Morningside, have already presented, out, but we certainly look forward to you joining us again in June, so you get an opportunity to really get a intense look at the work that they are doing. But with that said, obviously we know that you all are doing a lot of heavy lifting with the board. Are there any comments, thoughts that you want to share with our overall group, both of our schools, our regional leadership, as well as the board?
So I guess one thing I'll say just off the top of my head is that my staff is currently in the planning process to develop a work group, and we'll be sending out those invites to different individuals within the community. And I'll just have weekly tag ups with everyone based on, concerns that you have, questions you might have, and you can just come together in this space and we can talk and communicate about, our children and their education. I'll also be discussing reopening plans in the fall. During this time, we're taking the time out now to allow Dr. Ghost and her staff to formulate their plan and kind of hopefully iron out between the board as well as her staff. And then from there, I'm able to present it to the public as a whole. And one of the I guess hotter topics right now is going to be the conversations around rezoning, redistricting, which isn't complete yet, but that's something that, again, Dr. Ghost and staff is dealing with right now. And I'm happy to say she's including the board in a lot of those conversations. So that's something that I want to talk to your community as well as your groups about as well in the future.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. No, I think the group here would certainly welcome the opportunity to engage with you and your team on that. And certainly, again, know that you are flexing now to be with us. But I would ask, are you open to entertaining some questions, should there be any from the board and the school leadership?
Sure. I can't promise I've got the answer, but I have no problem saying I'll get right back to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So are there any questions for Mr. Harris?
And if there's no questions, no need to be shy. I can leave you with my email if anyone thinks of questions, or I can leave you with my cell phone number if you want to call me as well. I'm perfectly open to any of those.
Okay. Yeah, no.
I'm sorry, Mr. Board Chair.
Yes, sir.
May I interject?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, so much for being with us today. If you could provide your information in the chat, that would be helpful. And certainly if you're planning to join us for the next board meeting, we can have an opportunity to gather any questions on the regional side that we may have.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'll provide in the chat. I'll also send an email to the group organizers here, and I'll put you in contact with my board assistant as well as my district liaison. So it's easy to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we'll also send them on a new calendar invite for that. The final board meeting for the school year is June 23rd at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
And so we'll just send that around as well, so you could have an opportunity to hear directly from our school leaders and just a brief overview of what's happening at the school level.
Oh, that sounds good. I appreciate you.
All right, outstanding. Well, thanks once again for joining us here. We actually were just at the process of adjourning the meeting. So before we do that, I'll ask once again, are there any questions, any thoughts before we adjourn the meeting? And this is to the entire group. All right, awesome. Hearing none. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for the hard work that you all continue to do for our scholars as well as the community. Really appreciate it. You all, you know what? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting now.
Move to adjourn.